What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host and producer, Logan Landers. Join me here today to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers 2024 team preview. My best guy, my right-hand guy from the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network, Jay McMinn. Jay, question for you. Are fans this year in Pittsburgh going to be waving the terrible towels in support of their team, or are they going to be booing them off the field? How do you think this team's going to play out in 24?
Yeah, I think all of this really depends on that quarterback room and did they improve it or did they stay status quo? As you know, they redid it, Logan. No longer.
You ain't kidding.
We don't have Kenny Pickett. We don't have Trubisky. We don't have any of those people. Now we got guys like Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And I think it really comes down to who is going to outshine the other. Now, I do think Russell Wilson is going to get the start to this season. And then, of course, it's going to depend on how well he plays at that position for these guys, as if he keeps it, or if Justin Fields can somehow find his way back into the starting rotation and rebirth his career. As you know, the Steelers have not had a good quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger left them a few years ago when he retired. So they really are still trying to find his heir apparent. And again, can Russell Wilson rebirth himself? As you know, he loves to throw that deep ball, which could show well for George Pickens. Last year, I had George Pickens on my fantasy squad, and he had up and down games. There were games when he looked great. There were games when nobody ever threw him the ball. So will George Pickens actually get the ball thrown his way more than what he did last season? That really is the ticket, I think, for these guys. You do have Van Jefferson and Roman Wilson, but neither one of those guys make you feel happy or warm and fuzzy inside. You have Pete Fremberth as your tight end, who can catch the ball when thrown it to, but again, not really all that exciting there. You know, we look at George Pickens last season. He got thrown to 63 times for 1,140 yards. You don't have your wide receiver one only get the ball 63 catches. That's just not even in the realm of possible if you're going to have a good season. So they really have to throw the ball more. Najee Harris has to be better than what he was last season. So does Ty Warren. Ty Warren actually was running the ball for more yards than what Najee Harris was doing. So Najee really needs to step up his game along as the wide receivers. And hopefully this quarterback room and them stretching the ball with George Pickens will hopefully do that for the running group. You know, if you look at what is actually doing well for this team, it's their defense, which was ranked number 7, I believe, last year. I still think they're ranked number 7 this year. They have Watt and Fitzpatrick as your secondary captain and your front 7 captain. And that's a good front. Those are 2 good guys to have. They also added Patrick Queen to that linebacking group, which in my opinion was a huge one. They also got Joey Porter Jr., which I think is going to have a better season this year. And they should creep into that elite defense, I think, at some level this year than what they were last year. And they're going to need that. The overall team is ranked number 15, Logan. And I see Atlanta, the Jets, Baltimore, Philly, KC, Cincy, and Baltimore as being tough teams for them to the point where I think I can see a 10-7 as their best. And I could also see 9-8. But I'm gonna say 10-7, Logan.
Yeah, when I look at this team, it's interesting, right? Because they got some solid pieces, but also you're still not sure. Quarterback room, completely new. We'll see if it takes an extra time to gel with that receiving core, as you mentioned. George Pickens, I mean, I think we can say budding star, right? Guy who has good games, but he hasn't put it all together yet. And Jay, you mentioned last year, I looked at his receiving stats. He only had, like you mentioned, 63 catches on the year, but that ranks 50th in the league. There's running backs who have more catches than him. Granted, he was targeted 106 times, but we know it wasn't the best throws for the most part, right? We know Kenny Pickett ain't what Russell Wilson is, right? I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think Pickens will have a better season. You mentioned Najee Harris. He's got to step up. And look, I'm not saying he had a really solid year last year, but I think he could do more is what we're saying. I mean, since he's been in the league, Jay, he's ran the ball for 1,000 yards every single season. 8 touchdowns, which was a career high, 4.1 average, also career high. But I think, and I think what you think too, he hasn't been hurt. He's played in all 17 games, all 3 seasons. I think you give him the ball more because he can get it done. He's a good running back. 6th in terms of carries last year with 255, 7th in terms of yards with 1,035, tied for 13th with 8 rushing touchdowns. The average ain't there. The average, you're going to see a 4.1, say, oh man, only 4.1. But like I said, he had 255 carries, so they fed him the ball, but he was going that length a couple times. But I think you give him a little bit more this year. I think with a better O-line in Jay, like we said, we know who they drafted first round this year, Troy Fatano. That was their first round pick, left tackle.
Yeah.
So I kind of think I know what they're doing there. They're trying to get more protection for Wilson, who is going to be their starter, I believe. They're going to get protection for him, but also open up some opportunities over there, especially on the left side, if Fatano works out, for Najee Harris to go to work. I think Pittsburgh's offense, I think that's solid. Calvin Austin, he's been in the league for a couple of years, still seeing if he can kind of break out and do much. You mentioned Van Jefferson, who's reliable, I would say. Rowan Wilson's interesting because they drafted him this past season, had a really good year at Michigan. We'll see if it can translate into the league. And then when you look at their defense, they've got vets like Cam Hayward, who's been there for ages and ages. We know TJ Watt, who when he's on the field, he's a dominant force. We know. You had mentioned Joey Porter Jr. Minkah Fitzpatrick's a good player also. Patrick Queen, I think, was a huge addition that's really going to help them out, especially at the linebacking core. And I think that Pittsburgh is going to have a good season overall. But when I look at this team and how I think they're going to rank in the standings in their division, I don't know if they have what it takes quite yet. When you look at the North, I mean, it's tough going, man. Baltimore's good. Cincy is also solid. Cleveland got some good team. And Pittsburgh, I just don't know if they're going to do it. They were 10-7 last year. They had a really good year. But I don't know if they've got what it takes. I think that they might stay at that record, maybe get a 1 or 2 win improvement. But I just think the North is a really tough division to be in right now. If they were in another division, maybe, but it's tough out there with all the teams I had just mentioned. With Baltimore, who we just did a video on, you can go check out what we think about them. I mean, Cincy, we've talked about before and how they have a really good lineup. So it's tough, but I think they'll have a good year. I think they'll be, kind of middle of the road, a couple of games above 500. But I expect a little bit of a better season from Pittsburgh. I think their offense is going to be a little bit better. Maybe their defense is obviously improved, but I don't think they have what it takes quite yet to get over the hump there in their standings out there in the AFC North. But that's our opinions. Want to hear yours. How will this team do? How will Pittsburgh do? Are they going to win their division? They're going to come just short on it, or will they just miss the playoffs altogether? Let us know in our comment section. Well, Jay, appreciate you coming on the show as always, talking about these Pittsburgh Steelers. I've been your host and producer, Logan Landers. Guys, until next time, we'll talk to you again on another